Okay. Welcome to Welcome to our Tuesday, May 3rd, 2022 Exeter Township School District Committee of a Whole meeting. Prior to this meeting, the board met for an executive session regarding personnel. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Mr. Fike, can you please take roll call?
Dr. Ann Herring.
Here.
John Fiddler. Dr. Andrea Battler.
Here.
Dr. David Hemberger. Jason Mell.
Here.
Timothy Morgan.
Here.
Robert Quinter.
Here.
Julia Schaefer.
Here.
Allison Wilson.
Here.
7 present, 2 absent.
Thank you, Mr. Fike. In addition to the 7 board members in attendance this evening, we're also joined at the board table by our solicitor, Sharon Montaigne, and members of the school district administration, including Dr. Cindy Rozeski, substitute superintendent, Dr. Eric Flam, director of teaching and learning, Mrs. Dawn Harris, director of pupil services, Dr. Christy Haller, director of human resources, and Mr. Brian Fike, who serves as our business administrator, as well as our board secretary. Okay, the meeting minutes are attached. Does anyone have any changes or discussion they would like to make regarding meeting minutes for the board committee of the whole meeting April 5th and the board voting meeting from April 19th?
Dr. Herring, I do have one minor correction to be made on the April 5th committee. The whole meeting minutes, page 20, it states, Mr. Mell shared that during the 2018-19 school year, the overall enrollment was 8,095. The correct number stated was 3,895.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, President report. Before I give an update on the superintendent search, I'd like to thank those in our community that took the time to do the survey. It was very helpful hearing from the community, and I truly believe it helped create our superintendent profile as well as the questions we hope to ask the candidates. The survey was filled out by, I'm sorry, Joe, can you put up that? There you go, thank you. Is that the one? Okay. Yeah. The survey was filled out by 9 district administrators, 104 district faculty, 24 support staff, 7 board members, 55 district residents without children in school, 208 district parent guardian of current school district students, 12 district parent guardian of student attending a non-Exeter Township school district school, 11 Exeter Township community civic leaders, 14 Exeter Township School District local business owners, and 26 respondents that felt they fell under other, as well as the 75 district students that filled out the student survey. A quick summary of the survey indicates that in the area of expertise, the community finds communication and academic performance to be the most important. In regards to style of leadership, the community would like to see the superintendent that is accessible, approachable, visible, and one that is decisive. The most preferred personal quality is integrity as well as committed. And the following are what the community would like to see in regards to dimensions of district leadership: innovative, role model, and vision. Trends and patterns of the survey comments in regards to strengths stated strong community, great staff students, great extracurricular programs, diverse facilities, and strong course offerings. Some weaknesses were leadership, administration, instability, communication, and teacher morale. And the wants were superintendent that lives in the community and a team player. From the content of the survey, the board created a profile in which we will be focusing on a leader that strives for academic performance with the following 5 important traits: trustworthy, communicator, committed to Exeter Township School District, visible, and team builder. Regarding the applicants, there are 14, several from Berks County, others from Lehigh Valley, Western PA, Chester County, and a few others from out of state such as Maryland, South Carolina, and Nevada. During today's meeting, the board has agreed to move forward with interviewing 8 candidates. For the interviews, aside from the 9 board members, the following have been invited to sit on the panel: Dr. Cindy, Brian Fike, Dawn Harris, Dr. Flam, 1 secondary ed administrator, 1 primary ed administrator, 2 teachers, 1 staff support, 1 from food service, and lastly, the student president of the junior class. Lastly, as a reminder, Monday, May 9th and Tuesday, May 10th will be our initial screening interviews. Wednesday, May 18th will be the second round interviews, with May 19th to the 31st set aside for possible third round interviews, site visits, and/or contract negotiations. And that concludes my report. Regarding the agenda, we will not be amending the agenda tonight. So we'll be moving on to committees. Education, with Mr. Fiddler's absence. Dr. Battler, can you go ahead with that?
Yes, thank you. It is recommended that the Board of School Directors approves a tuition agreement between Hoffman Academy and the Exeter Township School District to provide special education services for students from May 12th, 2022 through the end of the school year at a cost of $118.50 per day, or a total of $948. I can keep going. Okay. Also, it is recommended that the Board of School Directors approves a tuition agreement between New Story and the Exeter Township School District to provide special education services for a student through June 1st, 2022 at a cost of $385 per day, or a total of $10,395. Excuse me. And finally, oh no, not finally. It is recommended that the Board of School Directors approves tuition agreements between the Vista School and the Exeter Township School District to provide extended school year services for 2 students for the period July 6th through August 11th, 2022 at a cost of $17,365.02. Finally, it is recommended that the Board of School Directors approves a tuition agreement between Hogan Learning Academy, LLC, and the Exeter Township School District for special education services for a student for the 2022-2023 school year at a cost of $78,300.
Dr. Butler, I just have one question.
I didn't know if I could stop us. Sorry.
So under the Vista School ESY tuition agreement, it says here that it is for an extended year. So it goes through the summer, July 6th to August 11th. I was just wondering if we could elaborate a little bit more on that as to what that is and why it's during the summer, and if this is something we see normally. Thank you.
Absolutely, and that's something that I would like to turn over to Dawn Harris if she doesn't mind.
Extended school year is a mandated service for students who are in special education, receive special education services. It's mandated through both IDEA and Chapter 14 of the PA School Code. There are certain criteria for which students have to meet that criteria in order to qualify for ESY. So districts run their own ESY program for students who qualify who are attending on campus. So ours usually runs through the month of July. But then students who are in out-of-district placements, those out-of-district placements are also, of course, required to provide those services for students who qualify. So that's what that is.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, Dr. Harris, I had a question as well. The one for the Hogan Learning Academy, can you explain a little bit what the Hogan Learning Academy is and why it's a $78,000 cost to the district?
Sure, it's an out-of-district placement for a special education student. That is the cost of out-of-district placements for special education students. In general, Hogan Learning Academy is this private school for students with autism. It's located here in Berks County, out toward Fleetwood Way. And they've been in operation for quite a few years now here in Berks County. It's one of the more prominent out-of-district placements.
A follow-up question to that is that include transportation, that cost, or do we provide transportation, or is it private?
Hogan actually provides their own transportation. Most out-of-district placements don't,
Okay.
but Hogan does.
And that's included in that 70?
I believe so.
Great, thank you.
Mhm. And this is I know it's a big price tag. Yes.
Sorry. I'm just trying to wrap my head around the price tag since it, for, one student's
Yeah, that's
$20,000. So
That's a fairly typical cost for an out-of-district placement for a student who is low incidence, but by low incidence, that means high need.
okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
And this particular contract is a renewal of a student who's already there, so we know that they're
Okay,
going to
that's-
be attending again next year, so it's just a renewal of that placement.
Understood. And do we expect to be able to bring that student back to Exeter? Do we know? Like, is that kind of the plan, or is the plan to continue
So
this relationship? I mean,
so
obviously.
I won't discuss this student in particular,
Right, I'm
but
sorry, yeah.
I'll answer that question in a more general way.
Yes.
So there are students who go to out-of-district placements for what we would consider sort of intensive services with the intent of them getting those services and then coming back onto campus
Mhm.
so that they can matriculate back into our programs. And then there are students who go to out-of-district placements because what they need for an indeterminate period of time is going to be more than what we would be able to offer here on campus for them. So for every student, it's different. There are students who will be in an out-of-district placement until they graduate or turn 21, and then there are students who sort of matriculate back in over time.
Okay, and can you also answer, just as a question, because I'm not sure of this, can you tell me, is this come from our regular general fund, or is there like state funding for these special education type of students?
So this is from our pupil services budget that we plan for here in the district.
Okay.
So there's general IDEA funding that comes through and general state funding, but I think if you've heard it once, you've heard it probably a million times from lots of different people that IDEA is basically an underfunded mandate. So
Yeah.
you would never get enough money to be able to cover the costs of special education. Special education is typically one of the larger portions. Mr. Fike, correct me if I'm wrong, typically one of the larger portions of any school budget.
You're not wrong.
And that's fine. I just wanted to make sure that I and everybody else realized that that's
No,
something
they're all
that
good
happens.
questions.
Thank you. Moving on. Conference requests. It is recommended that the Board of School Directors approve the following list of staff conferences. Number one, for $450 for a national conference to gain information regarding social work responsibilities and knowledge. And you can skip number two. That one has been canceled. On to number three, a $105.66 paraprofessional conference for safety care recertification. And then also I can do field trips within the 60-mile radius. The senior high students traveled to the Berks County Intermediate Unit on April 29th, 2022 to participate in the Reading Olympic. Oh my God, okay, let me start over. Forgive me, it's been a long day. To participate in the Reading Olympics competition, and I was just told that they took home the first place trophy, so congratulations to our senior high Reading Olympic competitors. Also, the field trip beyond a 60-mile radius, it's recommended that we approve the following field trips. The senior high 11th grade students traveling to Six Flags on May 27th, 2022, and the senior high varsity baseball team traveling to Disney's Wide World of Sports in Orlando, Florida from March 17th to 21st, 2023 to participate in the Disney Spring Training Program. And that's all for me.
Okay, can I ask, was that second conference canceled, or was it just something that's not as an
Yes,
expense to the?
Sorry, it was
It
canceled.
was canceled? Okay,
Yes.
thank you for clarifying that. Okay. Finance, Facilities, and Audit, Mr. Mel.
Yes, starting over with item A, Copier RFP Discussion. These, we have 23 copiers expiring on June 30th. The bids for the RFPs would be due May 12th, and a recommendation will be presented at the May voting meeting. Is there any discussion?
Do we lease these or do we own them?
I believe these are leases, right?
They're leased, but at the end you can buy them for a small
Buyout
price.
option.
They're 5-year leases,
Yeah.
and there's 27, I believe, next year that expire.
And do we take advantage of buying them if they're in good working condition, or do we just renew for all of them?
In the past, they've just been renewing it constantly. This year, I decided I'd put out RFP. I'm not sure what they did in the past. Problem is, most of these copiers and technology now, they don't make parts for them after 6 or 7 years. So if you buy them, you end up having something you have to dispose of.
Yeah.
Once it breaks.
Yeah. Any other discussion? Okay, moving on to item B, advertising discussion. This was something I had requested be put on the agenda. During our April committee, the whole meeting, I had brought up the topic of potential for any non-traditional revenue that the district could look for in terms of increasing our revenues. I had asked the administration to look into advertising opportunities and to see what the existing advertising is like currently at places like Don Thomas Stadium or any of the gymnasiums that we have. Dr. Mazeski spoke with Tom Legath about the current advertising. From my understanding, and please correct me if I'm wrong on this, during the pandemic, there was no charge for advertising fees for banners just because of the low attendance during those periods, obviously. And about 3 years ago, when fees were being collected, the charge was about $500 a season for the advertiser. And the actual materials were also paid by the advertiser as well, such as the banner. Speaking with Mr. Fink, it sounds like prior to the pandemic, we were bringing in roughly, I guess, $18,000 in advertising.
Correct. That was the previous year. The previous year before that was like 22. So
Okay,
averaging around 20.
gotcha. So and you may see it on last month's treasurer's report. There was a line item that's ACT/ATH other income, and there is a $28,000 revenue budgeted there. That is not all advertising. Just wanted to point that out. Mr. Fike had explained that some of that is charges to other schools to participate in our sports, in addition to any advertising that we would bring in. So kind of where I was going with this was I wanted to look at options to bring back or revitalize the advertising options that we could bring to the district and see what we could do in terms of increasing those revenues. There's obviously Don Thomas Stadium, in addition to the gyms for sporting events. There's various advertising that's possible in buildings from Library of Congress or Ad Council. The one example I've seen is actually Post-it notes. Had done some things there as well, just for talking about organizational skills, something that's more appropriate for a school. There's other controversial options out there. In Pennsylvania, you cannot advertise on a school bus. You can advertise in a school bus, but obviously you could imagine that could be controversial depending on, the advertisements would obviously be age appropriate, but still some people may not like the idea of having advertising on inside school buses. The other option is district website, potentially putting advertising on there as well. Again, these are all options, not pushing any one way or the other. I think that after speaking with administration, trying to investigate any of these further and come up with a plan. It is, nobody currently here is going to have the time to solicit, maintain, track, invoice the advertisers. It's a large job when you're talking about, especially depending on how much you get in. So my recommendation basically coming out of this is at potentially the next voting meeting, we consider two things: authorizing the administration to engage with an advertising agency and discuss additional revenue generating opportunities. And the other would be creating an ad hoc advertising committee in accordance with policy 005. The purpose of the committee would be to recommend an advertising agency then to the board, in addition to proposing the advertising locations and rates. Policy 707.1 is actually the policy that allows the board to establish specifications around approved advertising locations. That actually gives us the authority to set the rates as well.
May I ask, with the revenue that comes in for sports, does that stay in their fund?
No, everything goes to general fund.
Everything goes into general fund?
Their fund is what you approve in their budget, but if they get additional revenue, it goes to general fund.
Okay.
And one other thing that Mr. Melt, these signs we've had up, we've just never taken down. There's advertising signs for places like Subway that's been closed for how many years? You know, because they have not rebuilt or done anything since 2019.
Yeah, that was the one that was that the one in the Shelbourne Plaza?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Is
And
Tom
and there was also Dairy Queen. That owner has changed for a couple of years now too.
is Tom still doing all the contacts for the stadium signs and that sort of thing?
My understanding is that's not been
No,
happening.
he hasn't. We haven't been doing that since the pandemic pieces. Tom Gaff was the one that was doing that before that. But again, I believe it's a lot of additional work for one person to be doing. So I had emailed with Dr. Mel.
I'll take Dr.
Mr. Mel.
Sounds nice.
I think it sounds nice too, but I really do think that it would be beneficial if we could find an ad agency that would be willing to kind of do the work for a percentage of the revenue. I think it would help us make sure that the signs are being upkept as they should be, and the invoices are being paid, and we're getting the monies that we should get. And to be able to have somebody be able out there kind of looking around for some advertising opportunities too.
Yeah, typically, to Dr. Mrzeski's point, is what I've seen in just researching school districts that have done some advertising opportunities. It's generally a revenue split. So it could be anywhere between 50-50 split. I've seen 70-30 where the district's getting the majority. Really all depends on who we talk to and who we engage with.
Are there other
Why I
members?
question whether Tom was doing, Mr. Lath was still doing or not, because obviously we didn't pay him anything extra for it. And he actually came up with the idea to do it. Now, Dairy Queen, there may be a special deal in the back of your file because they did buy the scoreboard. And
But they also changed hands.
Huh?
They also changed hands. That person no longer owns Dairy Queen.
You're talking about
Hamid's
the electronic board?
Hammond's cousin
Yeah.
owns it.
You're talking about the electronic board that was donated to the
Yes.
to the school district?
Yes.
Yeah, we'd have to
All right.
look into that for sure.
There were some restrictions on that, and I don't remember exactly what they were, but. So,
Did you say that we did approximately $20,000 last year? Is that correct?
No, nothing last year. Last 2 years.
Nothing prior to
And
that.
I didn't budget it in this year or last year. And actually, after talk to Mr. Mel, I added $20,000 into next year's budget. which I'll tell you there. But just figuring if we replace all the signs or charge people for signs that they've already had that's just been sitting up there for 3 years without being paid for.
Mhm.
And in your policy, they have to be a limited period. It's not an indefinite advertising. I mean, there's also, we have not had a Pepsi or Coke contract in like 8 or 9 years here, which would also probably fall under advertising, which we should probably look at too.
When it comes to an advertising agency, is the final vote up to the board whether, because you said there are some controversial, things that you could either put on buses or in schools, etc. I mean, they wouldn't have carte blanche if we had an ad agency. We would have to.
Yeah, my understanding would be we would authorize the administration to engage with the agency to find out options, and then that would go through committee,
Okay.
and then the committee would present the recommendations to the board, and those recommendations would then be voted on.
Okay, that's what I thought, but thank you.
Yep.
I personally think it's a pretty good idea. Thank you for bringing it to our attention.
Any other discussion on advertising? Moving on to item C, food service budget. The final is for the 2022-23 school year revenue, $1,950,933 with expenditures of $1,947,875 with a net gain of $3,058.
One thing I want to note is we developed this budget based on students paying for the meals. There's still a possibility that the federal government or state government might extend the SSO, the seamless summer option, which everyone had free. If they do that, we'll have a net increase of, I think it was 6,000. It's only like 3,000 more. We'll be serving more meals, but we're also paying for more product, but reimbursement is higher. We went back to pre-pandemic and used the meal count at that time and based the budget on people buying meals. If people have to pay for the meals, I'm sure that the meal count will go down to pre-pandemic. So, but it's based on having to pay for the meals.
Are they looking to make that decision soon?
There's a push by the states, but the federal government says the states have a right to extend it if they want. So, I guess they're saying it's coming out of the state pocket, not the USDA pocket.
So do we need to wait for the state budget?
Right.
The state budget's going to be approved after our budget has to be approved, the way it's going. Like I said, the only difference is we're going to have a $3,000 surplus with us, with charging students, and a $6,000 surplus if everything's free. So.
And did you, forgive me if I misheard you, but did you say that's going to go through the summer potentially?
No, they call the summer seamless option is what they gave the schools in the last 2 years that everyone was free. It was
during the summer,
a term of the summer you feed the people that need to be fed,
Mm-hmm.
but they extended that to every student during the school year.
Right. I'm
And
sorry.
then-
That's
and
where I
then-
got confused.
And previous summers we had free meals for students
Yes.
that wanted to pick them up. That was summer seamless, but they extended that same thing through the fall, winter, and spring. But
Thank
it does expire June 30th of this year.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Fike.
Okay.
Any other discussion on food service budget? Moving on to item D, 2022-23 capital projects fund budget. Any questions?
I just wanted to go over a couple things. Joe, if you can pull that up, please.
Here we go.
Okay. There's last year we started an interior signage project at the high school. I think we finally have the layout and the room numbering scheme down in place, which that should finish up in June of this year. We also replaced carpeting with tile at Jackson Wall. We got roughly 80% of the building. We have another 20% to do this summer. We did the same thing, replaced tile around the school cafeteria in various areas. We got about 75% replaced last year. Roughly another 15,000 to finish up the building this year. Sidewalks repairs all schools. We completed everything. We had a budget of roughly 125,000. We only spent 95,000. That's 100%. Tom Legaff and I talked about some of the sidewalks that were lifted, and we actually brought in a service that pumped something underneath it and leveled it out, and supposedly they didn't crack. They're all level, so that should last a long period of time instead of digging it up. So we did save some money there. High school varsity Kerr Road garage rebuild, that was added during the fall winter, the fall this past year. The bus garage rebuild, that's ongoing. It's about 20% complete. All the site work is done. The foundation has been started. I think they even have the first course of block down, but all the piping and everything that's in there. The steel's still supposed to come the first week of June. We're supposedly still on schedule, so I'm hoping it stays that way. And should be 80-90% complete by fall. Maybe we can get temporary occupancy before they do the final coat on the parking lot. The high school varsity baseball field netting, we had a problem there that every time it hit foul balls, it was pounding a neighbor's house. At the end of the previous year, I actually went to the last game, and 7 balls hit the person's house in one game.
So there was a dog that was hit too.
Also a dog. There's a hole in the fence. I've asked the neighbor. I said, we replace that. He's right now, it's like, don't worry about it. I'm just happy you stopped the problem. So, and it actually doesn't look that bad when you get there. It's high, but it's nice. It stops them. So that's complete. Riften roof repair. We were going to try to do that last summer. It's a repair and recoat. It gives us another 20-year warranty. The material did not come in until, I think, the second week of August, and I put that on hold until the day after students leave because we didn't want any work being done on the roof. They can do some type of work beforehand, but once they start coating it, there's a smell of that, and I just didn't want to get into the building when students are there. And we also have no one going to be in the building this summer, so they can coat that, and we get another 20 years on that roof. This coming year, the only project we have scheduled, and we'll have more in the next couple of months, would be the unit ventilators at the junior high school. At one time, they had talked about replacing them all, but those units are still can get all new parts for them. So basically, you can rebuild them for about half the cost and get the same 15 to 20 year life out of them. So we're looking at that portion. If that happens, we're probably doing that summer of 23 for the first half of the year, and then the second half of the 23-24 budget, finish off the second half of the summer and maybe complete that next year. Joe, if you can move up a little bit, there's a couple future projects, and if you look over on the right hand side, the total projects that have already been approved are $6,740,000. That still leaves us a balance in that capital projects fund of $2,183,000. If we take out the junior high school ventilators, we're down to $983,000. Other projects we know that are on the radar: dehumidification at the senior high school, team rooms. We have to run dehumidifiers in there. There's nothing in the system. We're looking at, there was a cost estimate from KCBA about 4 years ago, about $90,000 to put dehumidification in there. I think we'll have to relook at that. There was talk for years about putting better signage on the junior high, like on the building itself, that you can actually know what building it is when you get up to it. Riften Geothermal Well, I think that was 2007. they say 15 to 20 years, you should flush the field, make sure that they're operating 100%. First, they'll test it to see what efficiency it is. So that could be about $75,000. The big ticket, the junior high school auditorium seating. The seating itself will be about $300,000, but the floor has to be ripped up because the mastic used is the old asbestos mastic. It's not the friable type, but once you drill a hole in it, you have to replace it all. So that adds another $300,000 to the ticket. They, over the years, been taking seats from the back and bringing them to the forward, but it's to the point there's no seats to what do you want to call it?
That project
Salvage.
was delayed several times
Right.
during my tenure. It's been going on for 15, 20 years, I think.
Right. It's getting to the point that it needs to be addressed. If Dave was here, he walked through the buildings. I think you've seen it. With the capital projects budget, you have to approve a budget every year, but it's not like general fund. You can actually modify it during the year because that's a special fund that you borrow money from bonds and that it's dedicated only for capital projects. So during the year you can modify that, but you should have a budget at the beginning of the year. So right now I'm asking just to keep working on the unit ventilators at junior high and come back. Any one of these projects will have to be bid or go through an ESCO like we did with the Losh rooftop replacements, but they still go back to the board for approval and an award. So, oh yeah, I forgot Losh HVAC replacements, 90% complete. There's one unit that just came in. It's going to be put on the roof end of this week, and they're in the process of commissioning all the units in the building.
The any of the ventilation work that's done, was any of that covered by ESSER?
The ESSER, was it 2? We used I think $170,000 or $80,000 to clean all the ductwork in the district.
That's okay. That's right.
Okay.
Yep.
It was interesting because I fought back and forth with the state review because they were saying it was construction, it's HVAC work, and you have to get pre-approval and go out to bid, and it has to go through the government. And I finally got them to agree it was not replacement or HVAC work; it was cleaning all the ducts.
Okay. And that was at every school we got it cleaned.
Well, all the schools that have ducts, which are the high school, junior high, I think there's 1 or 2 in Rifton and
Okay.
Walsh. Yeah. The rest
Gotcha.
are all unit ventilators.
Gotcha.
Right.
Thank you.
And even like the junior high, the ductwork's only in the main office area, those areas. The classrooms are all unit ventilators. So, and luckily, we didn't find any, what the M word, if you want to call it. So.
Mr. Fike, you didn't find any with money? Is that the one?
The bad stuff. Yes.
So the previous board approved a Kerr garage budget of $4.123 million. I see
Right.
here it's 4.5. I was wondering
And
if there's a discrepancy there.
The discrepancy is the engineering and the architecture fees, and they approved the 4.12 was actual construction cost.
Got it.
Then
Thank you.
you had building permits and all those other things, and the architect's fees of 6%.
So our construction costs are locked then. So
Yes.
very good. Thank you.
Yep.
Any other discussion on the capital projects fund? All right, going to move on to item E, the 2022-23 general fund proposed budget discussion. And I think Mr. Fike has a presentation for that.
Okay. All right. Joe, if you want to go to the next page. Just to reiterate, Pennsylvania School Code, by May 31st, 2022, school districts must adopt a 2022-2023 proposed version of the final budget. The Board President must certify the PD that the proposed final budget has been prepared, presented, and will be made available for public inspection. By approving a proposed final budget, you're basically saying this is what we're looking at right now. This is what we're going to have the public be able to make comments for at least a 20-day period. And then the school district must make their 2022-2023 proposed final budgets available for public inspection at least 20 days prior to adopting the final budget. Right now, I think our final June meeting is June 14th or 16th? 14th. So you actually need to adopt a proposed budget prior 20 days before that, unless you want to have a meeting later in the month. Okay. But by law, by June 30th, 2022, school districts must adopt 2022-2023 final budgets and adopt resolutions implementing homestead farmstead exclusions, if applicable, which we do here. By law, school districts must adopt balanced budgets, meaning that the total expenditures in the final budget cannot exceed the amount of funds available to the school district. Amount of funds include if you're using fund balance. Okay. And I just want to bring that because the state might not adopt their budget by June 30th. They go, the 1 year they went into mid-August. You know. Well, I don't want to remember back that far. Every district in the state was going out for bank loans because they didn't have any money because you cannot issue tax bills unless you have a budget and a lot, you know. Now, if the state does not adopt the budget by June 30th, the school districts, I think, have a right of 15 days after adoption to reopen their budget, as long as they did not send out their tax bills. All right. So I think there was a question from one of the board members before, what happens if you do not adopt the budget? And I asked Sharon if she could answer that in case that question comes up again.
Yeah, all kinds of horrible things happen if you don't adopt your budget. You can be, the Attorney General will audit you, PDE can withhold some of your payments, you can be removed as board members. I mean, the list goes on and on. It's a very bad thing. Even when the state doesn't get their budget done, you have the legal obligation to approve a budget for your local school district. The saving grace is, first of all, I don't anticipate that the state will have a delay this year, where I don't hear any great problems about that. But regardless, you simply don't have the option of not coming to some consensus on and approving a budget by June 30th.
And that's your budget. It's not what I'm presenting. It's what you guys decide on. Joe, if you can go to the next slide, please. So on April 5th, we presented a budget that I've scrubbed down after going through all the department requests, working with our principals, department chairs, department people. They originally had a little bit over $3 million deficit on their request. We knocked that down to 2.165, 928,000. At that time, Joe, if you can go to the next one. I had asked, basically said the previous year we had a 1.677 deficit after a 1.75% tax increase. Our preliminary budget deficit without tax increase, which you just saw, was 2.165. Our revenues are up 1.41%. State, at that time, I was projecting a 3% increase. Local 0.8%, and that's because increased our collections this past year were almost 100%. So our collection ratio went up from 98.6 to 99.2%, which says a lot for our people in Exeter, because during the pandemic, our collections actually went up. Expenditures were up by 1.99%. The budget maintains the current staff level. No program cuts. Activity fees are included. I'd asked for a 2.5% tax increase. which would cut the deficit to $983,332. If you remember when I was hired, well, some of you weren't here when I was hired, but you were probably here. One of the goals of the board at that time was to cut the deficit down to zero after 3 years. So what I suggested, every budget we cut it in half, and we cut it in half. Next year would be a third year, we cut in half. After that, it goes to zero. Our revenues, expenditures stay even. That we're not buying from reserves, because our reserves, we had money set aside for future budget deficits, but that each year we keep on cutting that down. And our unassigned reserve balance is 6.39%. You're allowed up to 8%. 6.39%, I think, is 21 days of bills. If the state would not pass a budget, or we did not get taxes out on time, after 21 days we'd be out of cash. Now that theoretically, because we pay everything 45 days late, because that's to be approved by, when we get a bill, it has to go to the board, so it's 45 days later they actually get paid, and all the contractors accept that. We would probably have up to the middle of August, if we did not collect taxes or have a state budget or a budget approved. But if you had to close everything out, you basically have 21 days of free money that you could, cover bills. Next slide, Joe. Today's budget, I brought it down to a 1.884 deficit. The unreserved fund balance would be 6.39%. If you, Joe, the next slide, please. Medical insurance costs came out. I had a 3% estimate before, or increase for next year is only 1.5%. I also had another $20,000 for advertising revenue. I feel confident now that we're going to get at least 3.5% increase in state funding, so I moved that up 0.5%. I know Dave and I have been going back and forth. I think he's starting to believe that if there is any windfall from the state, it's going to go to what they call level up funding, which is the poor districts that have been underfunded for years. They're going to get the majority of that increase. Every time there's extra money, they call it level up, and they give it to places that are poor or poverty stricken. D also decreased the operational capital request. Right now, if we're cutting the budget in half, I'm asking for a 2% tax increase, which would be a 0.6839 mils, 940,000. Average increase for our taxpayer would be $74.03. One thing to note, there was some positive news yesterday. The state came out with the homestead and farmstead money, and we actually had an increase. It's twofold. There's an increase, but there was also a decrease in the number of people that qualified in the county. And it went from, I think it was 6,800 to 6,650 properties that qualify. And the majority of the reason that it went down is because we had so many properties transfer last year and they didn't qualify, but they probably will qualify for next year. So the total amount that the state gives you divided by the number of properties is actually going to increase the homestead rebate to our taxpayers about $50 over last year. So now there's one other option I've been throwing around with Dave and Jason, is the bus purchases. We can start financing our buses over 5 years. Right now their rate would be 2.72. If we did that, that would knock another $270,000 off this year's budget. Now realize it's $350, so it's roughly $76,000 payment. Realize that once you start doing that every year, you start financing them, within 5 years you get be back to that same level of finance. But if you want to take that option, we could actually take the increase to 1.75%, which would cut in half, or .5998 mils, or an average increase for taxpayer $65.93. Questions? Jason, you want to talk a little bit? We talked
Not really.
a lot of this. I mean,
Yeah, just to reiterate what Mr. Fike said there, obviously the bus financing would be a decision that we'd want to talk about, if that's something we want to do, to finance that over 5 years. For the deficit decrease, I personally am in favor of it, and especially if we can also decrease the percentage down even further to 1.75% from 2%. Other than that, I don't think there was anything. The only other thing I had mentioned to Mr. Fike was I know that there in the news, the Exeter Commons had transferred between two business entities, and I think we're still not totally sure if those were from the same holding company or not. I think there may be some speculation there, but it was sold for $72 million. The transfer tax, when I was talking to Mr. Fike, he made sure to just reiterate the transfer tax is not on $72 million. That's the business sale price. It's on the real estate value, which was around, I think you were estimating about $6 million.
right.
So which would come out to about $60,000, and that's still, that money is split between the township yet.
Yeah, and Sharon and I were actually talking about this beforehand. The other problem with when places sell like that, usually the new company immediately wants to see if they get reassessed.
Yeah, that's always a concern. I felt like the Exeter Commons already went through that process, if I'm right. I thought when they were sold last time,
Sharon's been handling those for years.
Yeah, they may have, but with the new owner, they're going to go after
They're going to try it again.
Try to, based on a CLR. But
Yeah.
We will lodge a vigorous defense and see, if the value hasn't gone up.
Okay.
Now, the other thing Sharon and I had talked about, there's services out there that actually scan our area to see if there's any commercial undervalued.
Not just commercial.
Okay, well, property's undervalued.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can't stress enough that, from a municipal level, we really need support in growing our commercial tax base. And unfortunately, I do not see a lot of that kind of initiative happening right now. I do know that there was talks, obviously, with the promenade, that land, potentially they're being put back on the market, potential there possibly, but there were also plans for, during the time when the township had the plans to move up to the promenade, there was talks about hotels being built in the existing area. So I'm not seeing a lot of talk happening right now with opportunities there to expand the tax base. And to me, that's concerning. The taxpayers should be concerned as well, because that's going to hurt everybody.
Right.
Have they ever discussed the building of a conference center at the on the driving range at the country club, or did that die?
Yeah, that's a great question. So last time I remember that coming up was probably back in 2016, 17, and yeah, there was talks about potentially putting a hotel conference center on the driving range, and then that kind of later changed into moving the township facilities, administration, police, fire, all up to the promenade, and then sell the property that is currently the municipal campus, sell that to a builder that would utilize that land for something like a conference center that would have more visibility. More visibility to 422. Obviously, the promenade project was canceled earlier this year, where that initiative is no longer going to happen. So we're kind of back to square one, almost back to 2014 or 15 before any of those
Well,
master
Promenade
plan.
costs us about 120 grand a year in lost taxes.
Yeah. Yeah, without it having been on the tax rolls. Yeah.
So just to clarify, based on your first slide, are you saying that we need to choose one of these options tonight and move it to the voting meeting in May for the proposed budget in order to be within the state guided timeline?
Yes. Well, actually, what I'm asking you is, which option do you want me to do what they call the PD 2028, the state form, to present for the voting meeting? And that would be what the public would be looking at for the next 20 days. And you have the option to change it. Maybe we get lucky and I'm wrong with the state. They'll give us a lot more money, but I'm pretty confident on the 3.5.
Yeah. So you're looking for us to give you a rate,
or tell me you want more off, and
Yeah.
if you want to cut somewhere else, we can talk options there. But anywhere else to cut is really cutting services or programs.
right? There was Mr. Fike, you had mentioned before that there was some investigation, I guess, into scheduling changes that may save us money, but that's a longer term.
That's years. Just
Yeah.
We're also, as you know, Mr. Mel, Dr. Hemberger, we're also looking at the solar farm. Hopefully having a presentation.
Yeah.
Maybe before the voting meeting, just as an update on possibly doing 110% for our electric.
Yeah.
Which would save a lot of money down the road. But their engineers are out inspecting the sites and seeing if it's feasible to do both at Audit and possibly a little bit of land behind Rifton, which would cover 110% of all of our electric. Actually, sell the electric back to the utilities. But one of the things we're looking at the long term. Also looking at there's grants for buses, but I don't see those coming out for another 2 years.
Yeah.
And they'll all be electric buses. But with the garage bill, we did put in the conduit. We took that option and the contract awards to put in a conduit that if we ever do go to electric buses, we have put in the charging stations throughout the lot. Just run the wires through the conduit underground.
Yeah.
There's other things we can look at in the long run. A lot more things I'd like to do. Time consuming, just like the copier contracts. It's just trying to get everything out and get investigated and get it out right.
Yeah. So if anyone has any opinions on a tax rate that we're looking for, or giving Mr. Fike some direction on where we want to go for.
And the
budget.
reason the first, second or third slide is, we started the year with a 1.6 something deficit. So we're already in the hole coming into this year. Right now, we've basically increased that deficit by 200,000 roughly.
Mm-hmm.
And everyone got raises and cost of living and, our products that are coming in next year, especially paper, gasoline, diesel. Diesel went from $1.68 a gallon that we were paying, and it's in at $3 a gallon, and only guaranteeing that for the first 6 months. And I say $1.68, we buy it pre-tax. We don't pay taxes, so that's why it's not as high as you see in the pumps. But the same thing, gasoline was up. So hopefully inflation levels off, but we have it built in there for inflation too. So.
So what's the downside to financing these buses?
You just got hopefully their interest rates don't go up in future years. That's what I'm looking at.
So they're variable.
Right, because
Okay, sorry.
so that or next year you say we're not going to finance it and we're going to spend $350,000 cash.
And
And they've
just,
done that before. I think 4 years ago or 3 years ago, they financed buses. 4 years ago, they financed laptops over, I think, a 3-year period, but the buses were over a 5-year period. But, you know, my feeling is if you start it, you might as well just keep on doing it unless the rates really skyrocket.
the May voting meeting, that is going to be approving the resolution for proposed final budget, is that right? We're
Right,
gonna
and
need it
actually,
done then.
well, actually, everyone will get a PD 2028, which is about a 40-page document.
Okay.
It has by department, it also has information on debt in there. It has the tax rates, previous years, this year's, you know, showing that you're under the index. It has the all the taxes that we will keep charging, like the occupational tax, the transfer tax, those types of things. And it will also have using fund balance on there, but it will show as a balanced budget using fund balance and whatever the tax you decide on. By law, you have to have a balanced budget.
And if we don't increase taxes at all, do we know what that puts us in our fund balance?
Well, if you don't increase taxes at all, I can tell you right now, the money you have set aside, or signed, will drop to 3 million plus the 5, so you're maybe have another year you can do that, and then you hit the cliff and you'll never make up.
Yeah.
Like right now, this year, the maximum you can raise taxes without going to voter referendum was 4.5%.
0.5, yeah.
And if you get to the point that you use fund balance up, you know, it's you'll never make it up. So you will have to cut services. And none of this, I can't name the districts, but you can probably, Cindy knows it too. The county, they're from anywhere proposed from a minus 0.1 to 4.2, I think was the highest. The average is in the like 3.2% increase.
Yeah.
We just covered the cost of fuel going up. Cost of power is going to go up until you get your solar farm built. The average inflation right now is around 8 or 9%, and it's not going to go down. The Fed's going to raise their rates, so your variable lease on the or variable payments on the buses will probably be going up.
Yeah, well,
I
now,
don't like raising taxes, but at the same time, when you're running an 8% inflation, or, you know, there's no way the school is not, it's a nonprofit, but at the same time, you're doing a great disservice to the budget next year or the year after if you just want to look good and not raise taxes.
Yeah.
And I know I've got a reputation, I'll raise taxes, but I will raise taxes because the cost never goes down. There's always about a 3% increase in costs from year to year. That's why us old farts got a 5% raise on Social Security this year. You know, it's cost of living goes up. We got to pay our teachers. We got to pay our bills. And to expect us to do that at the same amount as we had 2 years ago is folly. Unless you want to cut programs, and I, quite frankly, have never wanted to diminish the quality of the education we give the kids.
Yeah.
Because that's our primary objective. So
Yeah. Let's cut programs or find ways to increase the revenue.
It is worthwhile mentioning, though, that, you know, the taxpayers are also, their households are dealing with that inflation rate as well. So, you know, I think
I
that,
pay more taxes probably than 60% of the people in this township. And I am on a fixed income for the most part, and I will invest my dimes in my kids, which are already gone and left school. But our kids deserve an education, and yes, I face the same 8% that everybody else does. So, and I don't get a cost, I get a cost of living, I don't get a raise.
Yeah, I just think there's a balance though that we have to have.
There's a balance.
Right.
Yeah.
But I won't drive the school.
I agree with you,
district broke.
Tim.
No, nobody likes
Nobody wants
paying
to.
taxes.
Right.
I mean, it's the nature of it.
I do
It's-
have a question though, if I may.
Sure.
I mean, we keep talking about, you're either going to raise taxes or you're going to cut services. Could you maybe explain to me or the public what services are you even? I mean, just general. I'm not like, I mean, when you say services, a lot of people are like, oh, we'll just cut some services.
Okay.
So,
I first of all,
and I know I don't mean it would be you cutting the services.
it's not
It would
gonna
be sorry. It would be our decision, and I get that. Yes.
When I
Sorry,
started-
Mr. Fike.
No, I always end. I'll make suggestions, but I don't vote. Okay.
Right. I just
When I
just
was-
in general.
When I was in Chester during the state takeover, they asked me to come down there and set up, and I cut $20 million out of the budget. The first thing we lost was sports, arts, all extracurricular. They kept, I guess, basketball and football and track. That was it. Increased class sizes, and like I said, decrease the specials, because you have to educate. There's certain things you have to teach, and there's certain things you don't. And at that time, they were even considering cutting full day down to half day kindergarten, because you don't have to do kindergarten. That was not my suggestion. That was state suggestion. It was bad. But that's normally what you look at.
Okay.
You look at the specials, the
Do we
extracurriculars that
have-
are not mandated.
Currently, and as far as I know, we don't. But do we have extra specials in the?
Well, I call specials your arts, your musics, your
Well, right. But I mean, we don't have.
chorus.
So I'm just thinking art, music,
They're
gym,
But
and
only PE is mandated.
Only PE is mandated.
Thank you. That's what I wanted.
Right,
Thank you, Ms.
right.
Wilson. But we don't have anything beyond that, do we? That we could even consider cutting? Art
Yeah,
Or
Oh,
music or
literally.
library.
Oh, okay.
Chorus, band, those types of
Thanks.
things.
Like strings, etc. Okay.
Or you lose by attrition, you start increasing class sizes. And
Right.
I know.
Well,
Mr.
some of
Mel
us are
asked
almost
for the
maxed
average
out. I
class
think.
size, and we're within our limits.
Yeah.
Right,
Yeah,
but it's
but
pretty
There's
high.
no wiggle room
No.
really
Yeah,
there.
there's not a
Yeah,
lot
there's
of
no.
But
No, I
there's-
know that.
But there's
Yeah.
no state mandate on how many students per teacher.
Really? Sorry, did not know
Unless
that.
special ed. That's
Except for
local-
special-
That's
okay.
local. That's local control for the regular classes.
Well, that's good to know because honestly, I did not know that, so I appreciate that.
But
Okay.
I'll let Dr. because I'm an accountant on that. Am I right on that?
You are. You did a great job.
Okay.
That was really good. Somebody trained you well.
Well, thank you,
I've been
Mr.
around
Fike.
too long, I guess. And that's why I start out the budget with not cutting any programs or services.
And I appreciate that. Are there any ways that you have seen in the past where people have thought outside the box, where they take some of the services? I mean, sports, obviously, we charge a fee to get in, different things like that. And,
Right.
Sometimes that pays for a certain sport, and that's great. Is there any way to leverage that with some of the other things that we do? Have we ever thought of that?
I think you mentioned activity fees.
Well, not
Activity,
even
if you want- I personally,
Yeah, I'm not a big
every
fan
year
of
I keep on asking if you want to do activity fees. I'm
Right,
not
right.
really
And I
for
don't
that.
right,
But-
but I
but
mean like
when
art
you're-
shows you pay this to get in or
Yeah.
this or something like that. I was just wondering if that's ever been something
And
that's
that
been
could also
considered.
be the ad hoc committee to actually look at what we're charging for use of facilities, those types of things.
Oh, I
you
see.
know,
Okay.
But, it's a two-edged sword because it's the same taxpayers using those facilities
Right.
that are paying the taxes.
Right.
So they actually have they should have a right to use the facilities when the kids aren't there.
Of course.
But that's only partially
But the-
true, right? Because we
right.
are using we are
Right.
renting our facilities out to elite tournament teams that are not from
True.
Right.
that are not from Exeter.
And then that's something you might want to look at,
Okay.
comparing what we're charging and what everyone
What are-
else is
yeah.
charging them. To at least make sure we're not losing. I don't want to say losing money, but whenever there's something going on inside our buildings, we have to have coverage. Someone,
Right.
custodian that's watching, that's not
Mhm.
doing his normal job. It's making sure people aren't running around the buildings.
Well, that's kind of what that's what I
one-
mean, like thinking outside of the box,
Yeah,
like
one
not
of the things
just.
we looked at in high schools, part of their capital request, not from from capital improvement fund, but from the capital operating, which is out of the general fund, is the putting in additional gates that you can close off certain sections of buildings. Because right now, whenever they have an event, we always have to have a custodian down there, basically making sure people aren't running through the building.
It's not gated off, like
It's
to
not
get.
gated off.
Oh, geez, it was in my head.
So
Sorry. Okay,
if you
gotcha.
go in that side entrance, you can go
Anywhere.
up the steps and through the buildings.
Oh.
And so we have to have someone control. I'm sorry.
I didn't realize that. Thank
Yeah.
you. I appreciate
But
that.
we
as well.
have, that's why our custodians act as security. So
Aw.
they aren't running around, but
No.
we, are acting as security, which they shouldn't be, which could save us money if we put gates in there.
So do we have an ad hoc committee?
I think Mr. Fike was referring to the advertising committee, the ad hoc one
Right.
we're going to be creating.
And,
I don't, maybe we change it to something other than advertising. It's revenue committee.
All right.
I appreciate all the information. Thank you.
So right now you're at a 1.884. That number is not if we do option 2 with buses, correct? That would take that then to about 1.5. Is that correct?
No, about 270, so 1.6.
1.6.
Right.
And then
Divided, the goal was to knock it in half each year. So if we took another 1.75 was 800 and I gotta go to my left. $824,000
from the deficit.
from the deficit, so that would cut it down in half.
But again, we're kind of gambling on what the state is going to do as far as their tax increase. Their contribution, correct?
Yeah.
Which we're saying is 3.5, and you said you're fairly confident you don't. Think
Yeah,
it's-
and
we're
I'm
gonna
on
see more than
the.
that.
Conservative side on that, I think, right?
I'm sure that's what we'll get. Yeah,
Okay.
I'm on the
Sounds
legislative
very
committee.
confident.
What I'm hearing is any additionals. They're talking about going to level up campaign, which is the poor districts. But they still got another month. But I think they're out of session right now, so they won't be back to June. So
So in a level up situation, Exeter would not be in the running for any kind of
no,
a summer money.
we're less than 25% state aid.
Yeah.
The level up is districts that are 75,
So that-
75% plus.
Not even for our Title I schools, that won't affect them at all.
No.
No. Okay.
So again, just to confirm, I'm sorry, you're wanting us to tell you right now if we want to move forward with the 2% or a
Well,
1.75%.
Which do you want me to present on the state budget for you to vote on next
Yeah,
month?
for the proposed final.
Okay.
Propose. It's not the one you're going to actually come out with. We might get lucky and something come out from the state before we
Right.
adopt the budget. And if they come out at the end of the month, you can always hold off on doing the bills and reopen your budget, for a period of 15 days. But also realize, normally the tax bills go out July 1st, and you have to wait to do a new resolution. And right now, I do have through July 2nd a quote for the financing at 2.72%. For the buses. 2.72. I think I sent that to you, Mr.
I'm sorry, Mr. Fike, what was the 2.72?
That's the finance rate for the buses.
Oh, yes. Yep.
Okay, so we need to make a decision which one we want to move forward with for next meeting. So does everyone want to just individually say what they would prefer?
Well, just to clarify, we can ask and move forward with anything. It doesn't have to be those two options.
Right.
Yes, it could be anything. So yeah, I mean, I'd say whatever your personal preference is to try to gain some consensus.
So Andrea, is there an option you'd prefer?
Not particularly, but quick, sorry, I apologize. The 2.72 you said we are currently financing the buses at?
No, I have a quote that expires, I think, July 3rd, that we'll finance them at 2.72%.
And that is a variable
First
rate.
And is that still
No, that's a fixed rate.
Oh, that is
so
a
that's
fixed rate.
fixed.
It's a
Okay,
five-year
that's
fixed
what I,
rate.
okay.
Okay.
All right.
So I have to have
Sorry.
an approved budget to sign off on that quote if you want to do it that way.
All right.
Right.
And
Mr. Quinter said the variable rate. That's what kind of scared me.
No, it's,
Well, I knew the 1.75 was probably variable,
but
so that's
what
why
he
I
was
wanted-
talking about future years, we have no idea what the rate's going to be in future years.
Right, so this is just
This is a
1
5-year
year.
fixed rate.
2.72 is 5-year
Year
fixed rate. Okay, and you were thinking about going to a variable to cut the deficit. Is that correct?
No, that in future years, we don't know what the rate's going to be, like in 23, 24.
So
If we go to finance buses, we have no idea what that rate's going to be.
So we may go back to buying them outright.
We might go back to buying them outright if the rate's 8%.
Okay, so
If the rates were
future
low, I
bus-
would say
for-
keep on financing.
5 years in the
future
future.
years. Yeah.
Okay, wait, forgive me. Okay, 2.72 is buying or leasing
Leasing
currently,
currently.
what we have.
Correct.
1.75 is
It's a-
purchasing.
No, 1.75 would be the tax increase.
Or I'm sorry.
Yeah.
The okay. So
If you wanted to purchase, we'd be at I'd recommend a 2% tax increase.
understood. Okay.
we're-
So
we're
we're
saving
discussing
that money.
lease. Okay. I apologize.
And they call it a capital lease. It's actually a finance or purchase. You own it at the end of 5 years.
Right. Okay, that's where I was a little bit confused. I apologize. I really don't like either of them, not gonna lie. However,
Again, you don't have to choose either of those options. You can choose any. You can say what your feeling is about anything you want.
yeah, I personally would really like to look into trying to increase our revenue in other ways. I mean, I do not want to see the services cut. I'm sure nobody wants to see the services cut. I don't want to see, extra, I don't want to see anything necessarily go, but I would like to see how we can tighten our belt so that we're not putting this on the taxpayer. And I only say that because, as everybody has said, inflation has gone up. Some people are not going back to work. Social Security only increased 5%, which is to Mr. Quinter's point, but inflation has risen above that. So the difference, I just really do not want to see a tax increase of anything over 1%. So that's my personal preference.
Thank you. Jason?
Yeah, I mean, personally, obviously, like I said before, the revenue opportunities there will help, but they're not going to, as much as we do there, they're not going to take care of this deficit. And really, in terms of revenue increase, that's going to be very impactful. Again, is going to be expansion of the commercial tax base, and I don't see that happening anytime soon. So, the options are we have to raise taxes or we have to cut programs. I mean, it's that simple. And I haven't seen anything here that is palatable to cut for our students or parents either. So I'm trying to, it's basically a compromise between our taxpayers and the students we serve. So for me, I think if we're still staying on track for getting the deficit eliminated, I would go with the option of 1.75% with the bus financing.
Thank you, Jason. Allison?
I agree with Jason. I believe that Mr. Fike started this plan last year to cut down the deficit, so I think we need to continue with it.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to say no increase at all, just because I don't want to see it increase. I just don't.
What do you want to cut, Ann?
I understand what you're saying. I don't want to cut anything. I get it. I want to live in a world where we don't have to cut anything, but I just feel like we need to dig deeper. And I understand what you're saying. I do. But this is just my belief, how I want to move forward with this.
So just to clarify, I'm just asking to clarify. So do you want to take it all out? So you want to, so we'll keep the deficit and we'll take it all the fund balance, or you want us to? You're saying that we should go back and look at what programs we can cut to make that up.
I want to go back and look at what more we can cut, and then if we have to go into the fund balance, then yeah.
Okay,
Your
let's
opinion, Pam?
see what the administration says we should cut next.
So in looking at this, I mean, this is tough, right? Because I don't want to see a tax increase, however, and I've said that. However, we also have to realize that if we don't have a tax increase, then we're going to be out of a fund balance if we don't do cuts. Because this is proposed and we don't know the actual state funding yet, this isn't a final vote. I'm willing to look at the 1.75% and with the financing, I would ask you to continue to look at where we can trim fat. I know there's not a lot there without making major cuts to programs, but I'd ask you to just keep digging and looking where you can find things. And then I would ask that if the state gives more, that we take that directly out of the tax, not split it in the fund balance. So if we we're at 3.5 now, so if we wind up getting 4 or 4.5, I'd like to see that come directly out of the tax and keep where we are with the deficit to go directly to the fund balance.
Yeah, I think actually we did that last year. Allison, I think we were at 195, and then it came in a little bit better, and we went down to 1.754 because of that. So I think that's what you did last year. I'm just hoping that we see it before we have to.
Thank you, Tim. Julie?
I don't want to see a tax increase at all. I agree with you, Ann, but I don't also want to cut any type of programs. So it's hard to make a decision because we can't cut programs. We can't cut things from our students. And I don't really want to burden the taxpayers with the deficit or take from the fund. So if I had to choose between the two, I would actually rather, like Andrew said, stick with a 1% if we can get that. I don't know, Brian, if there's something you can dig deeper into to see where we can pull from. I mean, do we need buses? I don't know. Eliminate all of that.
You don't.
I mean,
You can cut transportation.
Yes, I believe transportation is not a requirement.
Transportation is not a mandate.
I'm not going to go there.
I know. I don't know. You want to finance buses over 5 years. I think it's a great rate. But I really don't want to raise taxes. And I agree we need to get everything down, and there's a 3-year plan, but I think 1%, if I had to vote for a tax increase, that would be it.
and you said I can do what you want me to do. It's just there's certain things that are going to be kicking down the road, or
I know,
or
and
cutting.
it's the inflation is it's insane. I mean,
And-
we've had 2 years of just insanity with.
And too many
prices
years
and-
things have been kicked down the road. We end up paying double what we should have for the bus garage.
So we're
because-
paying for the sins of the past.
Yeah. So it's either.
Well,
It's
that's
just
what
not-
we're doing now,
Yeah,
correct?
exactly.
I mean,
And
we're
it's just-
paying a deficit,
I'm one that
which we
doesn't
didn't.
want to kick down the road either.
No.
cut
No,
something
and I
or-
agree with you. I completely agree with you.
Because I've talked to, and I hope no one yells at me about this, but, I question everything from okay, band uniform refresh. Can we do that another year? No, we did last year and this is the second year, but okay. So, when half the uniforms looking bad and the other half looking good. No.
I remember.
I
I remember
appreciate-
wearing
yeah.
uniforms from high school when
did
I played.
I know.
Yeah,
Me
like,
too.
I wasn't.
I wore my
years
mom's
old.
uniform from high school. God
Yeah.
bless her,
Yeah.
because she was the same size. So I get it, and I really appreciate everything that you do to keep us on budget. But like I said, this it's just outrageous.
And it's
So-
it's bad. Last year, our copy paper was $22 a case. It's $38 a case.
Right, and we don't even know if we're gonna be able to get that soon, according to
Well, I'm
certain
locked
news
in at
sources.
38, but I also committed to 75% of what we used last year.
Right.
So that's another.
I understand, yeah.
They're going to have to stop using as much paper as they did.
Yeah, yeah.
Is it cheaper to use, I'm just asking, is it cheaper to use a copying service versus having all of these machines? And I know that there's times you need to use a copier, but, you know, we've gotten to a digital world where things are very...
Well, let's look at it this way. We just got a quote today from Jen. Can we talk on the commencement programs? 50 cents a piece if they went out, was it? And we can do it in-house for less than $5.
I was gonna say, I literally just bought a printer because it was cheaper for me to buy a brand new printer, cartridges, and paper than to get it printed at Staples or Kinko's.
But she's going to
Which
take
is-
2 days of her time to do it. 'Cause she
Well,
knows
right,
how to
right.
do it.
But what I mean is, coming down to the basics, I get it. It's cheaper to have it probably in-house.
Right, was that correct on that? 50 cents a program compared to $5, but it's going to take her 2 days to run the machine, to collate and staple, you know, but.
Can we get some students to volunteer their time for that?
Yeah, right? Well, I'm saying community service right there. Hey. They are, yeah.
Yeah, that's one thing I did learn, though. I could not use students for building anything for school. It has to be an educational program.
It could be part
It
of
could
the
be part-
internship
yeah.
program.
Yeah, maybe. we could do
Marketing,
something.
advertising.
Marketing, right.
Yeah.
That's what you do the first 2 years.
There are
I
laws
mean,
of what students can do for the school district.
yeah.
No, I know it's unrealistic for me to ask for obviously a 0% increase, or no increase at all, but I'd like to see around 1% at max if it's possible. But that's just how I feel, because I know we can't get to 0.
Thank you, Julie. Bob?
I always tell my wife that I quit before because I hated shooting myself in the foot every year. But I went to school here at Exeter. Of course, we had 30 people in the classroom the whole time I went to school. But with 65% or 67% of the township zoned non-commercial, rural, residential, and requiring 30 to 40 acres of land, which isn't complied with, we will never get. I went through many years of people sitting in those seats telling me how we couldn't build here, we couldn't build that, we don't want any commercial development, but then they
Why are you
complain
looking
about
at
the tax.
Why are you looking at me when you said that?
Well, and yeah, but the fact is the costs go up every year, and for them to say live within their budget, well, we do live within our budget. It's just that the budget increases every year. So I'll go for the 175. And if that's a fixed rate on the 5-year finance of the bus, good for you.
Okay, thank you. So that means we're going to move forward with the 1.75% in the proposal. Okay, is that everything?
That,
Jason,
yeah. Yep, so that's it for my committee report, Dr. Hearing.
Can I ask, under your committee, I had a question regarding the bridge possibly being closed at Pennsylvania and Shelburne. Is that going to affect us? Do we know anything about that?
Last time I heard it was moved. It was supposed to happen this summer. Ben knows more about it because of busing, but the last time I heard that was moved from this summer. I'm not sure if that's 100% yet.
There was
Okay.
a sign that was erected on one side of Pennsylvania that said construction was going to start, or some road work was going to start on May 9th. I don't even know if that's still there or not at this point, but it's
No,
gone
it's
now.
been
so-
removed.
Okay, I didn't
Yeah, I
mean
think
to-
Ben was
I haven't
told
heard
that they
anything.
canceled the project for the summer.
Okay, great. I didn't mean to
But-
surprise you
but
with
I'm
that
not
question. I was
100% sure,
curious. Okay.
we knew about that, and he was trying to do alternative routes, but, you know.
Thank you. All right.
Okay.
Personnel, Mr. Morgan.
Okay, it's recommended the Board of School Directors approves the attached updated job description for the Supervisor of Academic Enrichment. I'll go one at a time here. Is there any questions on that? Okay, moving on. We're going to have a speech therapist discussion. I believe, was this Ms. Harris? I had asked last meeting about, with us having the amount that it costs us to have speech therapists outsourced for part of our program, what that difference would be if we had that brought in as an employee. So I'll let you take it.
Thank you, Mr. Morgan. Dr. Holler and I are actually both going to participate in this discussion together, but I'm going to begin the discussion. So as you said, you asked the question of whether or not we needed to or would benefit from adding a speech therapist to the bargaining unit as opposed to contracting out all of those services. So right now we use 3 people to provide those contracted services. Our projected total cost for the school year is going to be about $225,000 for those services. They currently cover Owatton Creek and Rifton. In order to replace those services with bargaining unit positions, we would need 1.5 bargaining unit positions to replace those services. You're almost never going to get a 0.5 bargaining unit position for a speech therapist. So what we presented here was 1 speech therapist being added to the bargaining unit with the understanding then that the rest of those services would be contracted out. So Dr. Haller put together an estimated cost for adding a speech therapist to the bargaining unit, which comes out to be about $130,000 on average per year. But then you would add on to that the additional contracted services that we would still need to cover the caseload and the points of contact, which would be approximately an additional $70,000. So there's not really a cost savings here in terms of adding the position into the bargaining unit. There are some discussions around benefits, pros and cons versus having a position in the bargaining unit versus contracted services and what that brings. If you recall, last year we had this similar discussion, only it was me bringing it to the board to ask for a school psychologist to be added to the bargaining unit instead of through contracted services. That was really an emergent need because with the contracted services, there wasn't a school psychologist in a couple of our buildings every day of the week. And since school psychs are part of crisis response, threat assessment team response, and counseling, it was really necessary that we added that additional bargaining unit position to give that consistency in the building 5 days a week. It is not an emergent need to do that with the speech therapists in the same way that it was with the school psychologists, but there is benefit in having that position in the bargaining unit for the fact that it is the same person here 5 days a week. They attend your faculty meetings, they attend your in-service days, they're really a part of the team in that building. Whereas with contracted folks, they may be working in another district on the day that you have your faculty meeting and so on and so forth. So with the contracted services, the pro is that we have the flexibility in scheduling them. It's easier to fill holes in the schedule because there are multiple people covering it as opposed to one person's schedule that we need to fill in. So I think when Dr. Haller and I discussed this, we weren't feeling strongly one way or the other because there is no cost savings to you that we needed to add it to the bargaining unit. But of course, we're always happy to have additional bargaining unit positions in lieu of contracted services. Dr. Heller, I don't know if there's anything you wanted to add that I missed. I don't know if you want to explain how you came up with your average cost for the bargaining unit position.
So I want to thank Mr. Fike because he checked my math. So I was over there a couple times. So what we did is we looked at our 3 contracted speech therapists that we currently have. We looked at their salaries. Took an average of those salaries, included their PSERS, their Social Security. That's how we came up with the base salary that you see. The benefits are based on if it's a 2-person a household that is receiving medical benefits. If it was actually a person that we contracted that was receiving family benefits, that number would be about 22,000, and if it was a single person, it would be over 7. So again, this is a general estimate. As we've shared with the board previously, and what you've observed yourself, is because it's no secret this we're in a very competitive job market right now. Bringing people in on a lower step is not what is happening. That is not the trend. And just like school psychologists, speech therapists are coming in with a higher level of education. They're coming in at a master's. So already you can count on the fact that you will be bringing somebody in at a higher rate. Whereas, when you're looking at contracted services, you're paying the contract for the service. The bringing someone into the bargaining unit, that's also a little bit of a variable as far as what the salary is going to be and what the benefits are going to be.
In the last 5 years, have our speech therapy needs gone up, gone down, or about been this $225,000? Or I know that obviously the number for the contract has changed, but the hours of service.
The hours of service are relatively the same, but that's not any product of anything other than that's just the way it's been for the last couple of years. We could get an influx of speech students next year. We could get an influx of students who perhaps weren't going to early intervention, but were getting private speech services that we don't know about yet. And then they come in as kindergarteners and would require speech services from us. The other thing I would say too is, when we talk about staffing and staffing challenges that have basically plagued districts all throughout the pandemic, we did have a little bit of a challenge with staffing our speech therapist contracted services positions this year. But I was at our countywide director of special ed meeting last week and was talking to them about open positions that people have and related services positions. And some of them are struggling to fill bargaining unit speech therapist positions. So I think speech therapist positions are just like a lot of other related services like occupational therapists and school psychologists, where whether you're doing it through a contracted service or whether you're advertising your own position, people are just struggling to fill them.
I would ask that the administration just keeps us updated as, if you start to get even more of a need than you have now and it becomes a cost benefit plus the benefit of having, that continuity of the same person, that we revisit this in the future. It looks like we're not there now and we're in agreement of that. Now, I don't know about the rest of the board, but as far as I feel, but if that does change, like you said, it can, we should open this discussion again because cost of private services is so much higher. So
Agreed.
Thank you. Any other comments about that?
I was going to say, I just going to ask Dawn, because 2 years ago, part of the budget was bringing Laurel Life back in-house, right? Was it Laurel Life? What was that service?
We took Laurel Life out of house.
Out of house. But we did everything ourselves.
Oh, yes, yeah, we brought the services back in.
That was a decent savings, if I remember.
Yeah, it wasn't intended to be, but it turned out being. Okay. And when we presented that to the board, I was very transparent and said this is not going to be cost savings, but it ended up being some cost savings.
Yeah. And when we looked at these numbers, the problem I saw bringing this in is the students and the 3 people are there at the same time. So it's
the scheduling piece.
It's the scheduling piece.
That's why I'm saying even if we brought one position in, I'd still need to contract for other services because of the schedule.
Okay, next I'm going to go through C, D, and E, which is resignations, retirements, and terminations. Any comments or questions?
Mr. Morgan, if I could just make a comment about one of the resignations.
Yes.
She's going to hate me for doing this because she hates being the center of attention. But I did want to make a comment about Miss Jillian Broadhead. She is our secondary special education supervisor. She's going to hate me even more if I get emotional when I talk about her right now, so I'm going to try not to. But I just want to say that she's accepting a director position in Lehigh County. And I just want to say that I'm really, really, really proud of her. And I really appreciate her, and she is absolutely a shining star on the landscape of school administrators. Thank you.
My understanding is that it'll be hard to fill her shoes.
Her heels, yes.
Well, please wish her our best.
Will do.
Okay, next we're going to go to appointments. So appointments we have for certified staff, 4 virtual tutors for the 2021-22 school year, as well as support staff and extracurricular staff. Are there any comments?
I have a question. Are these tutors in addition to the ones that were presented to us a few meetings ago?
Yes, they are. They are actually for our cyber academy that we run in-house. Mr. Wilczek, who runs that, along with Mr. Flam, looked at student need and support that's required for the students to be successful in the cyber academy, and the recommendation was made to have our own staff assist students with some outside support.
So these are virtual teachers, they're not like
The students are,
interventionists.
yeah, the students are virtual. That's why they're virtual tutors, because they're in our cyber academy.
So they're not on campus.
The students are
Okay.
not on campus now.
No, but the teachers are.
There are teachers.
These are, yeah, okay, sorry.
Mr. Fike, do you know, are these costs coming out of the general fund, or is this as paid for by grants?
No, this is out of general fund.
General fund.
And
Thank you.
actually, I think we had the option, if I remember right, through the cyber service to use theirs, but they weren't available, or something like that. Yeah, but there was money budgeted for tutoring in the general fund.
Okay, thank you.
And have these 4 teachers been trained on we have a contracted curriculum, correct, through the cyber academy? Are these 4 teachers have been trained on that contracted curriculum, or is this just a general tutoring?
This is the general tutoring in addition to what they're getting Pearson. Dan Wilczek has been working with these teachers in that environment.
Do you mind if I add anything? If I add something, Dr. Flam? Okay. Many of you might not know, but my daughter is both in the Cyber Academy and in regular school this year. And Mr. Wilczek did reach out to me. She was having issues, and I did need a tutor for math. He set me up with Mr. Walsh, and did tell me that he was not only trained to be able to go into her curriculum, to be able to see everything that she's been doing, but he also is, he is able to see everything that she's able to see. Both of them are able to communicate effectively over, transparently through the computer or in-house, and that both of them have all of the information. And I have found that to be so far the case. Hopefully that answers some of your questions, Mr. Morgan.
It does. I know this is off topic from this discussion, but I do think it would be a good idea for the board to have a presentation from Mr. Wilczek. We really haven't heard about what's been going on in this cyber academy and its successes, especially with moving kids from private charter back into our district. So it'd be great to hear from him.
Thanks. We talked about maybe June meeting. Is that what we talked about, Dr. June 1st at the committee of the whole?
Perfect.
Great.
Thank
Thank you. Okay, I think this is our last, is G leaves of absence. It is. I got it all this time. So if there are no other discussions, I'm all set. Thank you, Dr. Herring.
Thank you, Mr. Morgan. Policy Committee with Dr. Hamburger not here. Mrs. Harris, can you handle that? Thank you.
We have one policy up for revision. It's policy 808, which is food services policy. It's actually removal of language based on conflict between federal regulations and state codes. So language related to the provision of alternative meals being served to non-free and reduced lunch students once their account reaches a negative balance of more than $50 was actually removed from the policy. Based on the result of some recent food service audits by PDE, although PDE did add it into their code a while back, and we added it into policy to follow suit. They did issue a memo kind of saying, oopsie, you really shouldn't have that in there if you are a school that participates in the national school lunch or school breakfast programs, whether or not the student qualifies for free and reduced price school meals. So we did remove that language for this revision.
Okay, thank you very much. We will now be moving forward to public comments. No one has signed up, but no one was here at that time. If there's anyone that has shown up that would like to make a comment, no? Okay. Then we'll be moving the following items forward to our voting agenda. Meeting minutes. Education Committee A, B, C, and D, E, and G. Finance Committee. Are we moving the copier forward, or is that just discussion?
No, that will be moved forward, but not a consent item, because I'll be sending out the tab sheets the Friday before.
Okay, moving A, B, C, D, and E.
Can I ask what's being moved forward with B?
B, are we moving forward for approval of an ad hoc, I thought, or
So,
no?
yeah, I think there were two things I was requesting for that. One was to board to authorize the administration to investigate and engage with an ad agency to determine options for advertising. And then the second voting item with that would be to create an ad hoc committee. And I think based on our further discussion, it sounds like we want to create a revenue committee is what we want to call it.
Okay. With personnel, we'll be moving A, C, D, E, F, and G. And then with policy, we'll be moving forward with policy number 808.
Just from my understanding, was the board also requesting that administration provide examples of programs to cut at next, I guess not next voting meeting, but next Cal meeting? Is that something we were saying, or does that need to go to the voting meeting with the proposed?
That wouldn't have to go on.
Yeah, I mentioned
No,
it, but then
when
the, if
preliminary,
it
but we-
passed with the 1.75 and the finance the buses.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Are there any board members that would like to be heard at this time?
Yes, Dr. Herring, I just wanted to take an opportunity to wish all of our educators here in the district, as well as all of our educators who are public and within the Exeter Township School District, a very happy Teacher Appreciation Week, and recognize that we know how hard you work and everything you do, and it doesn't go unnoticed, and it's very appreciated. So thank you very much.
Anyone else? I wanted to update the board in regards to Mr. Logan Endy that came in last month for his Eagle Scout project. He exceeded his need for the units, got 65 units of blood for his Eagle project, which means he's able to move forward with that. So I want to thank everybody on behalf of him that donated. Also, it was brought up to me that prior to COVID, we were not live streaming our meetings. Basically, we were taping our meetings, and then it was put on our YouTube channel. So it was asked if the board wanted to continue with live streaming or if we wanted to go back to the way it was before. I don't believe there's any difference, really. I don't think it.
Is there any cost savings by going back to?
Right. And I think, should we be asking Joe if there's any, ask Joe if he wants to put in his input on that.
Joe, will we have to pay you any less money by saying?
Is there any?
He's not responsible for a live stream.
The stream is, if we're recording it, the stream is just, it's just one extra button to click, so.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I will say personally.
Thank you, Joe.
In this day and age, I think live streaming is a pretty common thing. Technology-wise, I think it's very convenient for the taxpayers to be able to, when they can't make a meeting, to be able to jump on. I know when I used to want to be able to see a meeting and I missed it, it would be a very frustrating experience having to wait days. And I'm pretty sure I was actually bugging Joe during those times and asking, when is this video going to come out? I would probably say if there's a cost savings to not doing it live, I would be in favor of changing that behavior. But if there's no real benefit from switching one or the other, my preference would be staying live.
Joe, question: we do not archive these, right? Because YouTube allows you what, 4 months? How long do they stay on YouTube or the live stream? Okay, we don't have to pay extra for storage or anything like that. Okay, I just want to make sure.
Jason, we delayed the tapes on purpose when you were looking.
I had a suspicion.
Okay, if everyone's fine with it the way it is, we'll keep it that way. Okay, that concludes our May Committee of a Whole meeting. Please note that our next meeting will be Monday, May 16th, for our voting meeting. And there will be an executive session tonight after this meeting. So I declare this meeting adjourned. Thank you.
All right.